Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, this video is going to be a bunch of quotes from various martial arts masters as well as other people, including some Buddhist quotes of various types. I'll probably give some commentary on some of them. I hope you all like this. Taiji Chuan master Zhou Senghua said, and it's not Zhou like J-O-E, maybe it's Jew. It's J-O-U. I don't know how you pronounce that Chinese name, but it's Zhou Senghua. And he said, quote, "Go back to the basics and practice," unquote. That's what he said. It reminds me of what Miyamoto Musashi said in his famous Book of Five Rings, where he said, "The way is in practice." And another good quote is by Masaaki Hatsumi, which said, quote, "It's not so much a question of aspects beyond the physical, but rather the thing is to bring the taijutsu and the mental and spiritual side of a person into harmony, like yin and yang. With this, one can switch between power and gentleness, between positive and negative. This may be a little difficult to comprehend, I'm afraid," unquote. Masaaki Hatsumi also said on one occasion, quote, "This stuff cannot be taught. It has to be discovered for yourself," unquote. Interestingly, this is almost exactly the same thing as what Grandmaster Wang Xiangzai, creator of Yi Chuan, said to his student Kenichi Sawai. And a quote that I like by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said, I think he's a Hindu. He's a Hindu monk. He said, "Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says, when the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyment, nor for those who are bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of material energy," unquote. Prabhupada is so right here. He's absolutely right about this. Concentration is basically impossible for those who watch TV, listen to music, read novels, etc. But even if you do indulge in those sense pleasures, meditation does still give you benefits. It does still give you greater mental and emotional control. And it does help you cut off suffering by controlling your mind and blocking out your emotions to a significant degree. So even if you are addicted to sense pleasures, you should still meditate every day, because it will still give you significant benefits for as long as you practice it daily. And if you stick to the same meditation object for years and years, then you will gather great momentum with that object, and will make much more progress than if you switch from meditation method to meditation method, never sticking with one method. Sticking to one method is far superior. And there's a Chinese saying, which I also wanted to quote, when I wanted to share with you. It says, quote, autocorrect here, fucked up. It says, quote, autocorrect fucked up again. So quote, it says, quote, "Though I live to a ripe old age and study ceaselessly, there is always more to learn." And Masaaki Hatsumi also said, somewhere in one of his books, he said, "The simplest is always the most difficult." This is definitely true. Just because something is simple does not mean it's easy. And then Hatsumi also said at one point, "You are all moving too fast to understand this technique. Slow down and understand what you are doing first," unquote. This is very much like Yi Chuan, which teaches that one should practice stillness first, and then only practice movement slowly and mindfully, so that one is always aware of exactly how one is moving. And Masaaki Hatsumi's master, Toshitsugu Takamatsu, said, quote, "Life is like a top," unquote. This is very, very true. Life starts out, you know what a top is, right? It's like that thing that's shaped a little bit kind of like a triangle, like a dreidel, I believe I think that's the word, that Jewish top. It's got like four sides and you spin it. Well, most tops though are shaped kind of like a bulb, right? Like it's got a point on the bottom and it's like rounded on the top, and it's got a little, like a stem sticking up at the top, and you grab it with your fingers and you spin them. I mean, you use them to spin the thing, and then it spins and spins and spins and spins and finally winds down, right? That's a top, in case you don't know. I mean, it's like an older toy. I mean, I think they still exist, but most kids these days play video games and all that. They don't use tops for fun, you know what I mean? Not that I really use tops for fun much, but, if you're bored, you can almost turn a top into anything, right? But, I mean, you can turn a lot of things into a top if you, spin it fast enough. Kind of like you can kind of turn a penny into a top, or a dime, or a quarter. You just hold it with one finger and bam, you flick it real fast and it spins on its edge, right? It's kind of a top. So it's very, very true that life is like a top. Life starts out when you're full of energy and enthusiasm and happiness, and then your energy and health and enthusiasm and all that slowly declines until eventually you get sick and you die of old age. You know, you have far less energy in your 30s than you do in your late teens, and you have far less energy in your 50s than you have in your 30s, etc. A top spins slower and slower and slower and slower until eventually it topples over and stops. So this is what life is, you know. You get older and older and weaker and stupider and less energetic, and then you eventually die. Hatsumi has also said, quote, just feel the flow of the situation and take control using whatever technique comes to light, unquote. Hatsumi also said, quote, do not forget, however, that you need things you do not need, unquote. This is a really especially good quote because it's like just because you don't really, just because like in meditation, for example, no particular method is all that much better than any other method, or even if it is a little better, it's mainly what you bring to the method rather than the method itself that's important. It's mainly what you bring to it that's important. And same thing in martial arts, right? Like you're not supposed to get stuck in just knowing certain techniques and this is how you do the technique and I just know this many techniques and I want to learn more techniques and blah, blah, blah. That's not what real martial arts is about. Like Budo Taijutsu, taught by Hatsumi, who owns like, you know, a bunch of scrolls. He owns the main 9 scrolls of Taijutsu, and he, you know, passed down from different various masters, combining all those schools. But he's also been granted the scrolls of a bunch of other schools that aren't even in that, you know, vein of martial arts, because those people couldn't find good students to pass those techniques on to. So, you know, they wanted to preserve those lineages, and so they passed their scroll on to him. So he's the holder of a bunch of scrolls, Hatsumi is. He's a real master. But, you know, like in martial arts, in Budo Taijutsu, it's not about the techniques. They teach you techniques, but it's not about the techniques. It's about like almost like learning the basics of the principles behind the techniques so that you can like, you know, spontaneously create new techniques whenever you need to in whatever situation. You can create whatever new technique is appropriate for that situation, right? Rather than being stuck to a certain amount of techniques, right? Like karate is very like, these are the moves, and like you learn the moves and you perfect the moves and stuff. Rather like, you know, Taijutsu, it has moves, but it's more about like achieving that, you know, brilliant in the moment spontaneity that can't be predicted or anything, and can't really be turned into, well, I guess it could, but like, you know, you're not going to create a curriculum full of thousands and thousands of moves, all of which are created spontaneously, right? Similarly, Wang Xiangzai's I Chuan, which is created from Xing Yi, was very much about like standing stake meditation, and then also other forms of standing meditation, which are like, you know, low postures with one leg in front of the other, and like at an angle, and then your arms are like, you know, spread kind of wide, and different kind of postures, like fighting postures. So you practice these, and then you attain more body awareness, so that you can just spontaneously punch and kick and move in whatever way is appropriate. You know, kind of very much like Bruce Lee also. Like Bruce Lee, Hatsumi, and Wang Xiangzai basically all say the same thing. It's not about the techniques. It's about the spontaneous things you do in the moment. You do whatever's appropriate, you know. And so yes, it's true that you need techniques, but in a sense you also don't need them. But you can't forget that you don't need these techniques that you actually do need. You first learn the techniques, then you let go of the techniques. You don't need them anymore. But you can't just like act like you don't ever need any more techniques, or you don't need to learn techniques, or you don't need to practice them, whatever. You need to realize that you do need the things that you don't actually need, that you're supposed to go beyond. You know, and especially to like be able to go beyond those things, a lot of times you have to learn them in the first place so that you can get beyond them, you know? Like even Wang Xiangzai, like even his martial art, which is pretty formless because it's mainly based on standing meditation of various kinds, it also has several other elements, like 6 or 8 other elements to it. Like, and one of them, he's got all these names for them. I can't remember, like Shi Li and Mokabu, and I can't remember what they're called, but like one of them I think is like freeform fighting, and another one is like basically just push hands. Like I think it's really not all that different from Tai Chi push hands, although I think it might be faster. Like, you know, they push and then like, you know, it's like a quick thing, almost like boxing or something, but it's like a pushing type of thing. But yeah, so maybe it's just a faster version of Tai Chi push hands, I'm not sure. But so even he has kind of like training techniques and stuff. So you can't just like say, oh, I don't need techniques and then not practice or whatever, right? You have to practice because you need the things that you don't need, and you use the things that you don't need to get beyond those things themselves. you see. And Hatsumi also said, there's no need to rush. If you rush, you'll actually miss some things. Don't work too quickly. Just work at your own pace. It will come to you. Masaaki Hatsumi has also said, develop one stage at a time, unquote. This is very true. It's essential to go slowly or else you'll mess up both stages if you try to develop two stages at a time. If you skip a stage or you just develop it a little bit and then you move on to the next stage without mastering the stage before it, you're not going to be able to develop the later stage properly because you didn't develop the stage before it that it's reliant on. And you're not going to be able to develop the previous stage well because you jumped beyond it before you're even finished learning that stage, you see? So you have to go one stage at a time. He's absolutely right about that. I know this because I'm one of those people who tends to jump to the next stage too quickly, and it's always backfired. Always. It's never a good idea. And this person called Kanon Kubose, I wrote down his name in his quote, but I don't remember who he is at all. But he said, quote, the Japanese say that all high arts eventually become one in the end. At that level, insights you might have in one will also improve your performance in all others, unquote. So I think this is a really good quote. I think it's quite interesting. And I don't know that from experience, but it feels true to me. My intuition tells him that he's right about that. And, this is the kind of thing that, people who are more accomplished than me at things, they've mastered some art or whatever, they say this kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, I think it is true. And another quote is by Taiji Chuan master Wu Tu Nan. I believe he, if I remember correctly, lived to be like 100 or 101 years old, maybe 102 years old. He definitely lived to be at least 100, if I remember correctly, which I think I do. And he was asked the question, is Tai Chi practice the reason for your longevity? And Wu Tunan responded by saying, no, not directly. Taiji Chuan helps cultivate a relaxed spirit. Having a relaxed spirit is the secret of longevity, unquote. So I thought I would read that quote as well. That quote by him is quite interesting, that it's actually relaxation that creates longevity, not the Tai Chi itself. Although I think I actually disagree with him. Qi, whatever it is, not necessarily anything supernatural or anything, but whatever it is, it does seem to be a real thing. I've had experiences with Qi, and it definitely seems to be real. And so, Tai Chi does seem, I've practiced it, Tai Chi does seem to cultivate Qi. And so it does seem to me that it's not just relaxation that makes, Tai Chi so good at improving health and longevity. I think it really is the cultivation of the Qi that Tai Chi does. Although, if you want to add to that, meditation also can increase libido and energy. And so, from that perspective, we could say that, maybe meditation increases or improves Qi flow as well. And so meditation is good for your health just the same way that Tai Chi is. Although Tai Chi is about movement and meditation is not, so I would say Tai Chi is probably better for your health. Although in another sense, Tai Chi actually increases libido and stuff like this. I would say, well, I don't know about more, but it does increase libido as well. So if you, increase your libido through your energy and stuff as well, through Tai Chi, but then you just waste it by having more sex or jacking off more or whatever, then you're just going to harm your health. That's going to be worse for your health than if you had not done any Tai Chi in the first place. So really, it's a matter of, cultivating Qi and preserving that energy. That's what, helps you be relaxed, helps you be healthy, and helps you live long. Not just the relaxation, not just the Tai Chi or the Qi cultivation, etc. You got to also preserve the extra energy that you cultivate through those practices, whether it's meditation or Tai Chi. And Tai Chi does not develop character and mental and emotional control the way the meditation does. So if you can't control your energy normally, and if you definitely can't control it during Tai Chi, then you shouldn't even be doing Tai Chi. You should be doing meditation instead, so you can control the energy that you already have. You know what I mean? Another martial arts master who is known in Budo Taijutsu because he was a master of an early form of one of the schools that became part of the main teachings of the Bujinkan, his name was Yo Gyoko. Yo was his first name and Gyoko was his second name, his last name. Or because it's Japanese, maybe that's reversed. Maybe Gyoko is his first name and Yo is his last name, but like they usually do in Asia, they put the last name first and the first name last, Anyway, his name is Yo Gyoko. He lived several hundred years ago. I can't remember how long ago. 600, 700, 900 years ago, something like that. He lived a long time ago, I think. And Hatsumi said about Yo Gyoko, he said, quote, Yo always valued bravery and did not act by logic, unquote. I really, really like this quote. I think And there's a quote about him, which a story about him in that same book, I believe that quote came from, called Essence of Ninjutsu. And Hatsumi said in that book that there's a story about Yo where he was, I think he was a martial arts master, so he got in a lot of fights, and I think he sometimes killed his opponents, or maybe even he usually killed them. I'm not sure, but he was invited, I think, to like some kind of banquet in his honor or something, some kind of celebration by this guy, and I think the guy might have been the disciple or a friend or something, or one of the masters he killed. And then so he knew it was a trap. He knew it was almost certainly a trap, right? But he decided to go anyway, right? And then I think they wanted to have the banquet or something on the second floor. And I can't remember whether he did it. He went up there anyway, or whether he just said, "Can't we have it on the first floor?" And then they're like, "Okay." So then they had it. And then if I remember correctly, I think I can't remember what happened after that. I think there was a fight, and he ended up they attacked him like they'd been planning to do all along, to kill him because they hate him because he killed their master or whatever. And then he and maybe one of his disciples, I can't remember, or maybe it was just him, like he kicked all their asses. I think he killed like a bunch of them, right? So he knew it was a trap. He went anyway, and then he killed a bunch of them, right? Like this guy was like hardcore brave, you know what I mean? And he was one of the founders of one of the schools of the Bujinkan of Budo Taijutsu. So this guy was like a hardcore master, you know what I mean? This guy was super talented in martial arts. I don't know if he was very old or not, but he was really talented. These kind of things are inborn, you know, like the stereotype is of the master being some old guy, but, you know, basically your ability to attain mastery in something is dependent on, number one, your natural talent and your ability to learn quickly, your mind, how good of a memory you have and all that, and number two, how much you practice. That's about it. How much you practice and what your inborn capacity is, right? So, you know, masters are just people born with an inborn capacity that's huge, and they train a lot, just as much as other people who get really good but are nowhere near masters because they weren't born with the inborn capacity that the master was born with, right? But yeah, so I don't think he was that old or anything when he went to that, you know, trap, and then he killed a bunch of people. But after they attacked him, but yeah, I can't remember how old he was, or if they even stated. I got the impression he was probably in his 30s or 40s, 50s at the very oldest. Hatsumi also said, quote, "There are three things humans must learn to function: the lessons of religion, the lessons of politics, and the lessons of nature," unquote. I think this is a very wise quote that everyone should know. These three kinds of lessons are all large and deep subjects, and a person needs to gain proficiency in all three in order to have a good life. Learning just the lessons of religion leaves you weak and naive. Learning just the lessons of politics makes you ruthless, dishonest, and corrupt. Learning just the lessons of nature is not sufficient either. Right? So you should learn the lessons of religion. That is, you know, how to be moral, how to be spiritual. You know, focus on the numinous and on enlightenment. Learn how to meditate. You should also learn the lessons of politics. You know, learn how to be cynical, not in like an evil nihilistic way, but like, you know, learn to, you know, not just be naive, not just trust people. You know, you got to be cynical. You got to learn, you know, how people are manipulative and how you can manipulate other people, not for your own advantage, but just to protect yourself. You know what I mean? At least you got to manipulate or try to manipulate when you're dealing with evil people, at least, right? And then, like, you got to learn the lessons of nature as well, you know, like how to be healthy and learn Tai Chi and exercise and meditate and all the stuff that you need to, and how everything goes in cycles, how everything is the yin-yang principle as well, you know, how everything always contains both yin and yang, and how yin and yang are always turning into each other and back again. Right? Like, you got to learn all these kinds of lessons, right? You got to learn lessons from all three of those categories: religion, politics, and nature, right? And when he says religion, I take that to mean, like, you know, spirituality, not necessarily religion. Like, you don't have to convert to Islam or Christianity. You can just learn about, you know, the numinous. Like, you can start meditating every day and learn some basic precepts to live, like follow the basic precepts of Buddhism for, you know, novice monks, like avoiding the 10 non-virtues, you know, follow those precepts and meditate every day, and you'll be, you know, practicing the lessons of religion. And, you know, learn to be cynical, learn how to not be able to be, you know, learn how to have a poker face so people can not read the truth in your expressions. This is part of the lessons of politics. And learn the lessons of nature, you know, practice Tai Chi and eat healthy and learn about herbs and all kinds of stuff, you know, learn about the yin-yang principle. You got to learn all three categories: politics, religion, and nature, to be a well-rounded person. And then the famous Tibetan monk Milarepa, who is said to have attained full Buddhahood during his lifetime, is reputed to have said this, quote, in their spotless ancient sutras, all the Buddhas in the past repeatedly admonished with the eternal truth of karma, that every sentient being is one's kinsman. This is eternal truth which never fails. Listen closely to the teaching of compassion, unquote. I think this is a very good quote, even though I no longer believe in karma or reincarnation. At the very least, we should view all human beings as our kinsmen, and all intelligent animals like deer, pigs, dogs, cats, etc. as our kinsmen as well, even if we have to occasionally kill them for one reason or another. Vegetarianism is far superior to eating meat. There's a reason we don't have teeth like predators, and we don't have short intestines like predators either. Short intestines are for meat eaters. We don't have short intestines. Sharp teeth are for predators. We don't have sharp teeth. We're not carnivores. We're omnivores at best. And you could make a pretty decent argument that we're not even meant to eat meat much at all. Just look at our teeth and look at our intestines. And here's something else I like. It's the Bodhisattva Manjushri's revelation to Sachin Kunga Ningpo. He said, quote, if you have attachment to this life, you are not a religious person. If you have attachment to existence, you do not have transcendent renunciation. If you have attachment to your self-interest, you do not have the spirit of enlightenment. If grasping arises, you do not have the authentic view. Another thing I want to mention is about, and after it said authentic view, that was the end of the quote. And I really, really like this quote. I think it's quite profound and quite accurate. Most people claim to be, a lot of people claim to be religious, a lot of Christians, a lot of people of other religions, but they are attached to this life. So they're not actually religious, and they're attached to the world. So they're not actually renunciates. Even a lot of monks, most monks, the vast majority of monks, I would say, are attached to existence. And so they don't have true renunciation. And most people are also attached to their self-interest. They don't truly have the spirit of enlightenment. They don't truly possess bodhicitta, the desire to save everyone. They truly are actually deep down selfish, self-oriented, And if grasping arises, you don't have the authentic view. That's right. The authentic view, the true wisdom, is totally devoid of grasping, totally devoid of clinging, craving, etc. And so if you have any kind of clinging or craving at all, even a tiny bit, for anything, then you are not enlightened and you don't have the authentic view. Although when it's talking about authentic view, I'm assuming it's talking about not conventional right view, which is more intellectual. It's talking about right view in terms of realization, Another thing I want to mention in this video is about this guy called Xu Xuanping. Xu Xuanping lived hundreds of years ago. I can't remember how long. I think it might have been back in the Tang Dynasty, which I think was before the year 1000 AD. I think it was maybe 700 AD or something around there. So this guy had this style of Taiji Chuan even back then. It's similar to other masters' practice, as I'll discuss later in this video. In a book on Taiji Chuan that I used to own a long time ago, it says, quote, Xu Xuanping's style of Taiji Chuan was called San Shi Qi because there were 37 movements, similar to the 13 movements in Chen's Taiji Chuan. That is, Chen style Taiji Chuan, which is what Yang style was evolved from in the modern day. Right, in the modern day, there's Wu style, there's another Wu style, there's Sun style. These are all styles of Tai Chi Chuan. There's Sun style, Wu style, the other Wu style, there's Yang style, and there's Chen style. And I believe Sun and Wu styles came after Yang style, and Yang style came after Chen style. But I'm not sure how long Chen style was around, whether it's a fairly new thing or whether it's been around for a long time, and then Yang style came around, and then the Wu and Sun came along not long after Yang style was created. I'm not sure how that works. Plus, even Yang styles actually can be quite different. There's the movements. There's the compact form. There's two ways you can differentiate forms in Yang style, and maybe in other styles too. There's the high forms where you don't bend your knees much, and then there's the low forms where you go through the whole Tai Chi form with your knees bent really low, right? And then there's other ones where the movements are really tight, and then there's other that's a large large style or something. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's the movements are really wide, and then there's other movements that are really tight, and those are called small style or whatever, something like that. So these are different kinds of Yang style as well, although they're all Yang style. One of the sons of Yang Lu Chen or Chang or whatever his name is, the guy who founded Yang style. One of his sons, no, two of his sons, I think, practiced the kind of Yang style with tight movements. These guys are aggressive and strong and energetic. And then his other son, or maybe it was his grandson. No, I think it was his other son, maybe, and then also his grandson practiced the wide movement forms, or maybe they created the ways of moving where it was more wide. And then this is more relaxed and more for health and less for fighting. Pretty interesting. But they all evolved from Chen style, which is quite different than Yang style, because Yang style is either it's usually, I think, performed at the same speed, whether it's performed fast or slow. The whole form is performed typically in the same speed. Whereas the Chen style is quite interesting in that it moves slow in some parts and then it moves fast in other parts. Like it'll be like moving slow like Yang style, and then bam, they like do a move that's like a punch, like it's really fast. So the whole form is like that: slow, fast, slow, fast. That's what Chen style is like. So Chen style is actually quite interesting and different than Yang style. It also has a lot of I think it's called silk reeling movements, and these silk reeling movements use the spiral energy that is said to wind up from the legs, which I think, maybe you can think of that in terms of chi, but I think it's actually more of a physical type of thing that they're actually talking about, kind of like moving up, like extending your knees, like getting your knees less bent and moving your waist up, and also turning your waist at the same time, and also punching at the same time, kind of like how I think that's the way it works, from what I understood. And that's kind of similar to boxing, right? Or even martial arts, where you don't just punch, you spin your hips as you're punching, so it makes the punch way more powerful. And even in boxing, you'll twist on your on the ball of your foot, I think it's the back foot, as you also twist your hips and you punch. So this makes it even more powerful, especially since I think you're also moving up at the same time, especially with uppercuts. You'll stand up more, so that also gives it more power, the punch. So this is part of what this silk reeling twisting energy of Tai Chi is about, which is pretty interesting. And some of the names of Shu Xuan Ping style of Tai Chi Chuan, which I think he called it San Shi Chi. Maybe someone else who called it Long Chuan. I think I mentioned that later in the video. But anyway, the San Shi Chi, which he practiced over 1,000 years ago, although I don't know that Chen style is that old, but Chen style probably evolved from something which evolved from this guy's Tai Chi, way, way, way back, right? It just goes to show how old these kind of practices are. They're over 1,000 years old, and maybe even older than that. Maybe they're 2,000 or 3,000 years old. Who knows? But they're at least over 1,000 years old, if I remember correctly. But it says that his San Shi Chi is similar to the 13 movements in Chen's Tai Chi Chuan, although it has 37 movements. Some of the different names are shoot snow goose with a bow, dustpan posture, sparrow lifts its tail, flip fingers, tan mountain is angry, grind the mill, and hang on the tree and kick. Shu's training method consisted of single posture practice, i.e. finishing one movement, then starting another without a standard sequence, which, by the way, is very different than Yang style, Chen style, Wu style, or Sun style. All of those do their moves in a specific order. But this old style of Tai Chi that was over 1,000 years ago, this actually had no standard sequence. You could go from posture to posture to posture in just totally different order. And that would probably also make the move between, the movement of your hands and your waist and your legs different from one movement to the next, because you're doing different, you move from move 1 to move 36, and then you move to posture 5, and then you move to posture 11, and then you move to posture 2. You move in whatever order you feel like. So then that's going to make the transitions between each of them different almost every time, So this is really interesting. And it says, after completing the 37 postures, the player automatically put them together as a single continuous movement. Quote, with the 8 trigrams in the arms and 5 elements under the feet, unquote, which means that all of the changes of movements are according to the principles of the I Ching. Completely identifiable with the Tai Chi principle, that is the Yin-Yang principle, the form was called Long Chuan because of its continuity. Both Shu Xuan Ping, who, if I remember correctly, was reputed to have lived to an age of over 200 years old, ate only uncooked food, as did Nijia master Chang San Feng. I don't personally believe that Shu lived that long, but perhaps Shu lived to an age of 120 years, and the rest was just exaggeration that got passed down over the years. And by the way, I think I forgot to say unquote. I think after the part where it says the form was called Long Chuan because of its continuity. I forgot to put an unquote there. That's where the end of the quote happened. But as you could tell, I was doing commentary in the middle before I finished that whole quote. But anyway, like he was said to, Xu Shuangping was said to have lived a really long time. I can't remember how long, 200 or 300 years or something, but probably exaggeration that's been passed down through the ages, right? But who knows how long he lived? But I bet he lived a really long time for that rumor to have arisen. He probably lived to the age of 120 or something, right? Which is really not unbelievable at all. You know, the Pali Suttas of Buddhism mention a couple of guys who lived to be the age of 120 years old, and even today, someone lived to the age of 115 recently, I think. So I don't think that living to the age of 120 years old is hard to believe at all, especially since people lived way healthier back then. You know, there's no pesticides in the food, no BPA on receipts, no crap in the water. You know what I mean? Like there was way more nutrients in all the food. I can totally believe people, living to be 120 years old way back when, because they lived way healthier lives back then. Especially, so I don't think living to the age of 120 is hard to believe at all. Especially if you're living in a way designed to optimize your health and are lucky enough to have great genes as well. Considering both men, Xu Shuangping and Chang Sun Feng, but considering both of them ate uncooked food, I'll bet there's some health benefits to doing so. I can't remember if Chang Sanfeng was said to have lived a really long time too, but I believe he was a martial arts master of the internal school, Nijia, like I said. So I think he did something like Tai Chi or something like that. I can't remember. I think he's the guy who wrote the Tai Chi classics. So yeah, I think he was a Tai Chi master. And I don't remember if he lived very long, but he definitely ate uncooked food. And so I bet there's some health benefits considering both he and Xu Shuangping ate uncooked food. Another thing you should keep in mind is this: quote, go to original sources, unquote. I'm sure if any of you have studied journalism, then you can understand why going to original sources is important. There's also a good quote from the internal martial art called Meihua Zhuang, or Mihua Zhuang, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's Meihuazaung, I think. Or maybe it's Zhuang, I'm not sure. But it says, quote, the road to perfect accomplishment lies in the freedom from random thoughts, unquote. That sounds pretty Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist to me. Meihua Chuan is similar to Yichuan. It uses 5 postures for Zhanzhuang practice and uses steps. There is spontaneous combination and freedom, just like Jian Wu, the way I understand it. And, just like, Bruce Lee, just like, like I said, just like Yichuan, just like Budo Taijutsu, etc. There's a similarity to a lot of top martial arts, right? Which is spontaneity and not being slavishly, devoted to techniques or anything, right? I think this is the essence of martial arts, right? Zhanzhuang, that is standing meditation, is also a major and fundamental part of not just, Yichuan and, God, I can't remember the name of it. There's this, I think it's called monkey. So I can't remember the Chinese name of it. It's like monkey something. And it's like you stay in this posture with like your legs are together and I think your toes are apart, but your hands are together at the heels and your knees are together and your legs are bent. And you're kind of hunched over and your hands are together at the wrists and your arms are like kind of palm forward, palm up. And your fingers are kind of splayed and you have your hands down by your knees and you kind of just like hold that pose for a really long time. Like, I don't know, half an hour, or whatever, and you do that, maybe even more. And then you do that for like 3 to 10 years straight, or something like that. Practicing that meditation, just standing like that, every day, for like an hour, or maybe even longer, every day, maybe a few hours every day, for like 3 years at least. Maybe it's like 10 years or 15 years. And then you can start to get good at this martial art. Can't remember what that's called, but yeah, so that's standing meditation. Yichuan does it. Xing Yi does it. Yichuan is sort of a radical offshoot of Xing Yi. Like so many internal martial arts, like Tai Chi, like I said, the San Shi Chi, Long Chuan, that did it as well. Liu He Ba Fa, I believe, also practices Zhanzhuang, standing meditation, and Bagua Zhang practices it. Like Bagua Zhang, Liu He Ba Fa, Tai Chi, the old style Tai Chi, San Shi Chi, Yichuan, and Baji. Baji is a semi-internal martial art. All of these practice standing meditation. Like when you stand and your legs, your feet are about shoulder width apart, and your hands are like holding a ball in front of you, or they're like whether either with your palms facing in toward you or facing out away from you, or You're practicing the single palm change stance with like, both hands kind of facing palm out or palm out slash down, and one's ahead of the other, and one foot is in front of the other. And there's like different stances that you practice, but basically it's the same thing. It's standing meditation so you can become more aware of your body as you practice not moving. Right? This is really, really effective, and that's why all these, really advanced martial arts practice this. Right? Here are some quotes from Hatsumi. Number 1, one can achieve anything with a firm heart. Number 2, only teach 50% of what you know. Number 3, always be able to kill your students. Number 4, focus on the future for 50%, the present for 40%, and the past for 10%. I believe it was also Hatsumi who said, quote, the knack of martial arts is no techniques, no intention, unquote. And a Gyoko-ryu, I think it was Gyoko-ryu saying, goes like this, quote, the martial heart holds harmony sacred, unquote. Perhaps this is a reference to a deep understanding of the yin-yang principle, or perhaps it's a reference to a martial artist's appreciation of peace and his unwillingness to fight unless it is absolutely unavoidable. Both interpretations are probably valid, and both definitely have evidence backing them up, although if it's the latter definition, that is, not wanting to fight, that's probably a quote that came out of the school after Yo-Gyoko was dead, right? Like the school arose based on his martial arts teachings, and then maybe a few hundred years later or something, this quote came about because, like I said, Yo-Gyoko was not one to shy away from a fight, right? Typically, if I remember correctly. Another interesting tidbit about internal martial arts is that the very sophisticated internal martial art called Liu He Ba Fa has another name, Hua Yu Taiji Chuan. Interesting, huh? That it's so similar to Taiji Chuan, even though it's not a form of Taiji Chuan. That is, the movements are all different. But if you saw someone performing it and you didn't know Taiji Chuan, you would think that it is Taiji Chuan, because it's like the same fluid movement and everything. I mean, it looks very much like Yang-style Taiji Chuan, even though the movements are totally different. But it's quite interesting that it has another name, which is Hua Yu Taiji Chuan. So it is kind of a form of Taiji Chuan, both in appearance and in the fact that it practices standing stake meditation, that is Zhan Zhuang, standing meditation, and also, it probably bases everything on the yin-yang principle. I know Tai Chi does. And like I said, it's called Taiji Chuan, so maybe it evolved from one of those proto-forms of Taiji Chuan, like San Shi Chi from over 1,000 years ago. Maybe they are both just, ancient descendants from the same ancestor, Taiji, Chen-style Taiji, and, Liu He Ba Fa. And by the way, Grandmaster Wang Xiangzai, who won over 1,000 duels, not to the death, but like, martial arts fights without weapons, just fists and stuff. This guy went around China fighting every master he could, trying to get better and see if anybody was better than him. And in 1,000 martial arts matches all across China, he was only beaten by two people, and the third person was Tai, because every person that he fought, I believe, or most of them, he fought 10 fights with, right? And then whoever was the winner of most or all of the 10 fights was the winner, right? So he was only beaten all 10 times by two guys. Everybody else he beat. And only one guy was able to basically tie him. That is, it was a White Crane Master. The White Crane Master won 6 out of the 10 fights against Wang Xiangzai, and Wang Xiangzai won 4 out of the 10 fights against the White Crane Master. So the White Crane Master was basically as good as Wang Xiangzai. It was basically a tie. And one of the only two people who was able to beat Wang Xiangzai every time in all 10 fights was a Grandmaster of Liu He Ba Fa. So yeah, Liu He Ba Fa is a really advanced martial art, and not even Wang Xiangzai could beat the Grandmaster of Liu He Ba Fa, which is pretty amazing, especially considering Liu He Ba Fa is one of those soft martial arts. It proves that, and Wang Xiangzai, he got rid of the principle of qi in his martial art. He thought that was kind of superstition and stuff. So he was about like cultivating health and body awareness and stuff through standing meditation, but he did not really believe in qi, although I think he sort of understood that like this is some kind of biological process happening here, but he didn't think it was supernatural or anything. So he was about basically cultivating health, kind of cultivating qi, but like he didn't call it qi, and he didn't really believe it was anything supernatural. So he very much modernized internal martial arts, and his martial art, I Chuan, it's the only modern martial art, it's the only modern internal martial art, and it's the only modern internal martial art. It's the only internal martial art that doesn't believe in chi, right? And if you watch each one, it's very much about explosive power, very much like boxing, kind of. But it's based on relaxation, more than boxing is, right? Boxers understand you can't be too tense, or else you won't be able to punch as fast. But like they don't really intentionally cultivate relaxation. They don't intentionally cultivate the sort of tense, relaxed springiness energy that is like you're relaxed, but you're ready to explode into movement at any split second. They don't cultivate that in boxing. So each one is kind of like boxing, but it's way more advanced. It's kind of like almost like a cross between Tai Chi and boxing, right? Like Western boxing. It's a cross kind of between those, you might say. But even he, with that explosive power and that amazing skill of his, where he beat all these other masters, hundreds of them, 997 masters he beat or whatever. Even he could not beat this Liu He Ba Fa master, which just proves that these internal martial arts are real martial arts and are amazingly effective if you master them. But they take way, way longer to master. They're way harder to master than like, White Crane or karate or, kung fu of any kind, really. External martial arts are easy to master relatively, but internal martial arts are very difficult to master. I wanted to mention that about all of that. And I can't remember who the other guy who beat Wang Xiangzai all 10 out of 10 matches was, or maybe he never mentioned who the guy was. But I think it might have been a Tai Chi master who beat him every time as well. I can't remember for sure though. But and another quote I want to share is by Taoquan. He's a Buddhist monk. Might have been a Zen monk, I can't remember. He said, quote, "Cast everything off," unquote. I'm a fan of Taoquan, Ikkyu, and Hakuin. I mean, I'm a fan of a lot of monks, like the sixth patriarch of Zen. I really like him. I really like Milarepa. There's all kinds of monks that I really, really like, but three of the ones that I do like are Taoquan, Ikkyu, and Hakuin, even though Ikkyu was quite rebellious, quite, you might say, heretical. But you should check those guys out. Like, look them up and read a bunch of quotes by those guys. Hakuin, Ikkyu, and Taoquan. They're great. Hakuin is spelled Hakuin. Ikkyu is spelled Ikkyu. And Taoquan is spelled Takuan. You should check those guys out. Those guys are very accomplished at Buddhist meditation. They're the kind of guys who you might say were either enlightened or were a lot closer to it than anyone else at the time they lived. Their full names are Taoquan Soho, Ikkyu Sojin, and Hakuin Ekaku Zenji. Here's an interesting quote from Andrew Weil. He said, quote, "If you simply condemn unwanted behavior without acknowledging what you're getting out of it, you may not be able to give it up, no matter how much harm it is causing. In order to change behavior, you must be clear about what satisfaction that behavior is giving you, as well as what it is costing you. Then make a conscious decision to move," unquote. In other words, you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. To be able to change your behavior, you have to acknowledge what you're doing. And not just what you're doing, but what you're getting out of it. Because if you think, I'm so addicted to this bad, destructive behavior, I can't stop doing cocaine or whatever it is, and it's destroying my life. Well, you have to realize how it's benefiting you too, so that you can meet that need in some other healthier way. Because if you don't recognize what you're getting out of that bad behavior, you're not going to be able to stop yourself from doing it. And you can also actually consider this to be a rudimentary understanding of the Dzogchen principle, which says recognition and liberation are simultaneous. I really like this quote, recognition and liberation are simultaneous. This is from Dzogchen, which is basically the Tibetan Buddhist equivalent of Zen. It's not descended from Zen, but it's very, very similar to Zen. And here's a quote from T.T. Liang. That is like his first and his middle names are T. Those are abbreviations. T and T are abbreviations of his name, but I can't remember what they stand for. But his name is T.T. Liang. He was a Tai Chi Chuan practitioner who died not that long ago. I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I can't remember. He said that, quote, "You should learn from many teachers, read many books, but only by serious practice can you discover the truth for yourself," unquote. And by the way, he lived to be like 100 or 101 years old. And like I said, this is in recent times, so this is a fact. It's not like, legend that he lived that long or something. And people do live that long, even today. Even people who don't do Tai Chi, so. But you could say, oh, he just had good genes, but no, he actually brought himself to the verge of death with, I think, alcoholism or something when he was in like his 50s or 60s. I think it was his 50s or something, maybe his 40s. And so he had really bad health. So he took up Tai Chi to improve his health, and slowly, he built his health back up. And then he did Tai Chi for the rest of his life a lot so as to preserve his health and live a long time. He also has these 10 quotes for living that are they're quotes by him. He made up these 10 principles for living that he wanted to live by, and they're actually all really good. I don't think I put it in this script though, so maybe I'll read those 10 quotes in another video if I haven't in a past video yet. But those 10 quotes are really good. He was a really wise person. I really like T.T. Leong, and he wrote a few books too, Tai Chi books. Like I think 2 Tai Chi books, or maybe it was 1 book on Tai Chi and 1 book on the I Ching. I can't remember, but I used to own either one or both of those, and they're quite good. Another quote is, quote, keep a quiet heart, calm as still water, never allowing any personal desires to stir up a ripple of disturbance, unquote. I can't remember who that was by. I think it was by a Wu-style Tai Chi Chuan master. Another quote is, have pure thoughts, quote, have pure thoughts and seek in spirit to forget yourself and transcend the common affairs of the world. Keep your life simple and your desires few, unquote. Another interesting quote is from a modern teacher of meditation. I think the guy's a Westerner, if I remember correctly. I can't remember what his name is, but he wrote a book on meditation, and he said, quote, meditation is fun. If it isn't fun, you aren't really meditating, unquote. And I think that's a pretty good quote. There's in a sense, you don't want to be attached to fun or enjoyment when you're meditating, because even the masters will tell you, sometimes meditation is, pseudo-masters, what today are considered masters, who actually suck compared to masters of the past. But, they will tell you that sometimes you have great experiences meditating, other times it's boring as hell. But you just keep on going. You just keep doing it day after day after day. And then you make progress. So I would not necessarily you should slavishly follow this principle, but in a sense he's right. It should not be a drag all the time. It should not be a grind, like you hate it, you do it every day, but you hate it. No, it's not supposed to be like that. It should be at least somewhat rewarding, right? So that's why I read that quote, because I think it's a pretty interesting one and a pretty decent one. And here's another quote. I think it's from Hatsumi. He said, quote, practice this feeling of God as nature, unquote. Hatsumi also said, quote, think nothing and follow your subconscious, unquote. I think this is a really good quote. Well, all these quotes are really good. That's why I'm putting them in this video. And Wang Xiang Zai said, quote, no part of the body is not like a spring, unquote. And someone once said, I can't remember who, but someone once said, quote, 80% of wisdom is minding your own business, unquote. And I think it was Hatsumi who said, the most important thing is to survive. This is also a really good quote. And there's a Ninpo saying that says, quote, every experience is sacred and may provide the key to the universal enlightenment we seek, unquote. And the I Ching says, as nature is always in motion, so should man act to strengthen himself without interruption. And Hatsumi has also said, this ability to switch between power and gentleness and still retain one's stability, this balance, this control, it's really vital, I think. It's also good to know, and then unquote, after he said, I think. It's also good to know that learning a few useful things is better than learning a lot of things that you cannot use. So if you only absorb a tiny fraction of this video and only 1 or 2 of these quotes stick in your mind and benefit you going forward and are ones you integrate into your life, then that's fine. You throw lots of stuff against the wall and then you see what sticks. You try a bunch of things and you see what works. Or, in like PUA circles, they say you ask a bunch of girls out and see which ones say yes, even if it's only 1%. That's how you get a date. You ask a bunch out, and then maybe someone only say yes after you ask 50 girls out or whatever, right? Like, so this is the same principle. You know what I'm saying? And so you throw a bunch of stuff against the wall, and then you see what works. Another great quote is also from the Gyoko-Ryu School of Martial Arts, and it says, quote, the warrior's heart is precious and essential. I might have said that one before, I can't remember. Some other principles from either that school or another school of martial arts practiced by the Bujinkan are the following. Number 1, quote, high philosophic strategy was in the presence of an enemy to be in harmony with him, never challenging but welcome with a smile, never showing a fierce grimace. If battle is unavoidable, don't let him near you. Or, if he's determined to close, that is to, get near you and attack you, then use the extreme waza to take him down. And waza means technique. And this is one of the fundamental principles of Budo Taijutsu, or one of the schools of Budo Taijutsu. So this shows that even hundreds of years ago, it was understood that, not getting in fights is the first and most important principle of martial arts. And even if someone's trying to start a fight with you, you should never engage with them. You should never let them start a fight with you. And even if they're coming after you, you should try to avoid them. And only if they're determined to really get after you, and you can't even run away from them, and they're determined to take you down and attack you and beat the shit out of you, only then do you fight. And then you use the extreme technique to take them down. Because if you have to fight, then you should fight with extreme prejudice, and really, then you're justified in, breaking their arm or their knee or whatever. You know what I mean? Although I would also moderate that if I with Shaolin principles of avoid rather than harm, harm rather than maim, maim rather than kill, and kill rather than be killed. The second principle of this school of Gyokko-ryu, I think it was, or maybe it was another school, I can't remember, but this same school of the Bujinkan, sub-school of the Bujinkan says, the second principle is, forget self, be patient, and fear not dying. And another of their principles in that same school says, in danger, say or show nothing. Women have really mastered this principle. When they're in danger of being caught lying, or they're in danger of, whatever, they just act like a poker player. They don't show anything on their face, they don't say anything, they don't give anything away, because they understand that when in danger, say or show nothing. Another principle of this same martial arts school says, as strong enemy comes, keep indomitable spirit. Another principle from this same school of martial arts says, vices dissipate your proficiency. This is really true, and this is actually very true in not just martial arts, but in progressive meditation as well. They really should have that principle in religion as well. Although Buddhism walls off all the things you're not supposed to do, so if you're following the precepts, you don't need to know that principle, because following the precepts means you're not having any vices, so then your proficiency is not being dissipated. But if you're like a Christian or a Muslim or something, you really should adopt and know this principle, that vices dissipate your proficiency in prayer or whatever. And then another principle from the same martial arts says, being drunk affects your judgment. Yes, this is true, and we should all know this, right? I mean, it's kind of common sense in a sense, but in another sense, it's like, why do people get drunk then? Obviously, they don't have full appreciation of this principle, or else they wouldn't be getting drunk, right? Because what else is there but judgment? Having good judgment is important. That's essential in life, right? And people think that, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, relax and have a night out and go get drunk, and it's no big deal, right? You got to blow off steam sometimes. Okay, well, even if you're not getting blackout drunk and you're just getting normal level drunk, just a little tipsy, and it's no big deal, what are you going to do? You're probably out with your girlfriend, and then you're going to say something you don't mean, or she's going to say something she doesn't mean. You get in this huge fight just because you're both drinking. Or you get drunk and you have fun, and then you come home to your girlfriend, your wife, and now she says something, you misinterpret it, and you get mad, or you say something and she misinterprets, she gets mad, or you say something that you don't mean, or that you always think but you never say and you shouldn't say because it would cause problems, and now you're getting in this huge fight because, being drunk affected your judgment. You see what I'm saying? If people truly understood this principle that being drunk affects your judgment, nobody would drink alcohol ever, right? The very fact that they drink proves that they don't truly understand this principle. Number 7 of this same martial arts school says, the seventh principle of this school says, destroy the enemy's power but leave his life. Yes, exactly. Even Aikido uses this principle, right? You immobilize the enemy, you lock them down, you get them in an arm lock or whatever, and then it's going to break their elbow if they keep resisting and they're in pain, but you're not actually injuring them, and you're definitely not killing them, right? This is how it should be. You should use no more force or violence than necessary, right? You can take the enemy down, you can even injure them if you have to, but you should not kill them. Right? Because if you're better than them, then if you go so far as to kill them, then you're just being more extreme than you have to be, and that's basically murder, right? You can beat someone up if you're a martial artist, you can injure them if they're determined to hurt you, and they're trying to hurt you, but they're way less skilled than you. Maybe they're not a martial artist, but they're big and strong. Well, then you can injure them if you have to, but you shouldn't kill them because you're more skilled than them, and that means you have an unfair advantage. You know what I mean? And that unfair advantage is for protecting yourself, not for going around killing people. Even if you have a legal excuse to do so, you still should not do so, because to do so is monstrous. That's basically murder, even if it's not legally murder. And another thing I want to read is by Taiji Chuan master Wang Ji Wu, which said, I think it was Wang Ji Wu, something like that. Yeah, I believe it was Wang Ji Wu. It says, quote, without desire one is strong. Without desire one is quiet. Without desire one may return to that which is natural. Without desire one returns to the original state. With a heart like still water, from the extreme stillness will spring action. From the void comes that which is alive. Yin and yang are in harmony, and the qi flows unimpeded. Unquote. I can't remember for sure, but I think Wang Ji Wu was a Wu-style master of Tai Chi Chuan, and I'm not sure, but I think he lived a really long time also. Like, he said this when he was in his 80s or 90s or 100 years old, something like that. So, yeah, another guy, another Tai Chi master who really knew what he was talking about. I think it was also another quote I want to read is by Masaaki Yatsumi, and I think this quote is by him, I'm not sure, but the quote says, life is to practice by myself. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was by him who said that, and I think that's a really true statement, right? Like, life is all about practice. Life is all about training, and you can't train with other people always, and if you rely on other people to motivate you to train, then a lot of times you'll give up. You won't train as much as you need to become a master, or they'll give up and then you'll give up with them because you were only doing it because they were doing it. You really should train all the time, and you really should train by yourself, because this is the way to mastery of something, right? And regarding, and here's another quote. It's by Jigoro Kano. He's a creator of judo. He said, quote, what is the secret? No, someone asked him, what is the secret of judo? And Jigoro Kano's reply to that person was, never stop training. That's a really good quote. Again, persistence. And the key principle, the number one principle of Budo Taijutsu is keep going. So really, all the great masters say the same thing, really, which is, keep going, never get up. Never give up. Never stop training. Never stop trying to attain mastery. Always keep going, no matter what. Even if you attain mastery, keep going, because there's always more to learn. There's always more skill to obtain, etc. And then here's a really good quote, or a couple of really good quotes by Timothy Leary. He was an Ivy League professor and a famous LSD advocate and experimenter. He was one of the main voices in favor of LSD during, I think it was the 60s or the 70s. And he said, quote, look within, have the revelation, and then express it in acts of glorification on the outside, and detach yourself from the current tribe, unquote. And he also had a famous saying that he coined. It says, turn on, tune in, drop out. Maybe you guys have heard of that before? And that's a really true statement, right? Like, you could even use that in terms of MGTOW, right? Like, turn on to the truth. Like, learn that MGTOW is true, listen to MGTOW teachings, tune in, learn what's going on, become aware of, female nature, observe it, and then drop out, like walk away from women, walk away from society. Like, this is how it is, but men should, turn on to what's going on in the world, not just female nature, and tune into, but turning on for him meant, like drop LSD, tune into what's going on in this inner world that is revealed when you're on LSD, and then drop out of the outside world. Like, stop playing the rat race, stop running on the treadmill, stop playing the ego game, stop, trying to do all this bullshit that society tries to make you do that's just making the rich richer, and it's not making life better for anyone or anything, right? So turn on by taking LSD, tune into the reality inside, and then drop out of this bullshit world that we're living in. Live minimalistically, live happily, live spiritually, virtuously, etc. So I think this is really quite wise saying, and I would say, turn on in terms of like, realize that there's a lot going on that you don't know, realize that the red pill is real and that you should get as many red pills as possible, tune in, that is, take as many red pills as possible, not just in terms of like female nature and misandry and stuff, legal misandry, but also in terms of like, false flags and JQ and all the rest of it, and then drop out, form or join a commune. And live minimalistically, save sound money, form your own society with its own rules, do as little for the government as you can, stay out of the government, incentivize the government to stay the fuck out of your business as much as possible, etc. Right? So this turn on, tune in, drop out principle is very true. Timothy Leary also said, quote, it's always biochemical. In order to do anything new, you have to change your nervous system biochemically. Now you can do it through breathing, fasting, dancing, solitude, diet, flagellation. You can do it through any sense organ, visual, auditory, and so forth. There are hundreds of ways of turning on. unquote. And Leary, which is very true, you can attain, brain change through many methods, and even through meditation, you can do many meditation methods: standing meditation, meditation on the breath, meditation on a mantra, but ultimately they all change the nervous system, and that's how you change your brain. That's how you change the way you feel and think, and this is how you change yourself. Timothy Leary also said, quote, "The movement is designed to the circuit created by the movement. The generator, on the other hand, is created by stillness," unquote. This is a really interesting quote that I like, because I don't think he practiced Tai Chi or standing meditation or anything like that, and yet that is the perfect description of how Tai Chi and Zhan Zhuang work. Zhan Zhuang's standing meditation is like the generator. You can generate Qi by that. But Tai Chi Chuan is the way that you can circulate that Qi. And so it's really interesting how that, a movement is designed to the circuit, and the circuit is created by the movement. This is true, right? And the generator is stillness. This is also true, and this is also why they blend stillness with the movement. A lot of Tai Chi masters, a lot of Tai Chi people today, I think, especially people who aren't really good at it, they'll just do the long form, or even most of them will do the short form. And the short form is 30 some movements or something. And then the long form is 108 movements or something like that. And so they'll do the movement, but they'll just flow from one posture to the next, right? But the real masters, what's his name, of, back in the Tang Dynasty, Xu Xuanping, and other masters have even just recently, 100 years ago, recent masters like Wang Xiangzai and what is his name? Yang Cheng or Yang Feng or whatever his name. I can't remember what his name, Yang Fu Cheng, whatever his name is. That guy who is the grandson of the guy who created Yang-style Tai Chi. That guy, and he was really obese, by the way, and I think I mentioned that later on in the video. That guy, people like him would practice standing in those postures of the style, and they'd hold it for 5-10 minutes, maybe longer, and then they'd flow to the next posture, and then they'd stick in that posture for another 10 minutes. And then they'd flow to the next posture, and then they'd stay in that posture for 10 minutes. Very much like Xu Xuanping, right? So this is very much, movement and stillness are kind of opposites, but yet they're both necessary, and they can be interwoven with each other, and they're both necessary, and they're both good, right? I mean, either one on its own is good, but it's better to do both. Much better, right? So, Tai Chi Chuan, Yi Chuan, and other martial arts like Bagua Zhang all practice standing meditation and movement. Another interesting quote is by Wang Xiangzai, creator of Yi Chuan, the only modern non-Qi believing internal martial art. He said, quote, "To gain strength and to be happy is an enduring principle," unquote. This is a really kind of simple and interesting, it's an interesting quote because it's so simple and yet it's so true. It's everybody wants to be stronger. Everybody wants to be mentally and emotionally stronger, spiritually stronger, physically stronger, they want their health to be stronger, and everybody wants to be happy. Right? To gain strength and to be happy is an enduring principle. This is very, very true. And that's what Wang Xiangzai's Yi Chuan is all about. It's about, cultivating health and learning how to defend yourself and attain happiness and stuff, right? And another great quote is by the founder of Kyokushin Karate. Kyokushin, if you want to look at it, the founder of it is Osama something. I can't remember his name. I think I mentioned it later in the video, though. It's Kyokushin is spelled Kyokushin. So that's a form of karate. You can look it up. It's kind of hardcore. The guy taught his students to do a lot of battles with each other and stuff. The guy was hardcore. But he was asked what a man ought to devote most of his time to, and that founder of that style of karate said training. Train more than you sleep. No, he said if someone asked me what a man ought to devote the maximum of his time to, I would answer training. Train more than you sleep, unquote. That's what he said. So the guy knew what he was talking about. This guy who founded Kyokushin Karate, he moved into the forest to live and lived there for at least 3 years. I can't remember how long, though. Maybe it was 6 years. He lived there for a long time, and he punched trees, and he bathed under very cold waterfalls. I mean, the guy was hardcore, and he did almost nothing but practice karate for those years that he was living in the forest. So this guy was serious hardcore, he knew what he was talking about, he's no poser. And Masaaki Atsumi has also said, quote, "You must throw away your bad habits to get good," unquote. And I think this is really, really true. Someone said, I can't remember who it was. I think it was another martial arts master. I can't remember what martial art it was. Might have been a Xing Yi master. I can't remember. And if it was, I can't remember the guy's name. I used to know his name, but I can't remember if it's the guy who I think it was. But some martial arts master said, knowledge is like the dust. And what the meaning of that is that, over time it builds up, right? Knowledge really is like the dust. You can't see it building up because it builds up so slowly. But, if you keep practicing every day, eventually you'll look over and you'll look back at how you were when you started and you're like, wow, I have made progress, right? So, slow and steady wins the race, right? There's also a good quote by Sun Si Miao. I think he lived a really long time too, like 100 years or something. He said, quote, one should be meticulous in planning but brave in application, unquote. This quote reminds me a bit of two quotes. The first is by Buddhist master Padmasambhava, Tibetan Buddhist master who founded the Nyingma school of Buddhism. And the quote said something like, quote, my view is as vast as the universe, but my behavior is as meticulous as grains of sand, unquote. And the other quote says something like, quote, a good solution executed with vigor right now is better than a perfect solution 10 minutes later, unquote. And those second two quotes, the Padmasambhava and the other quote, were quotes by my memory. So they might be slightly off, but that's basically what both of those quotes said. Another quote is by Master Wang Ji Wu, and I think Musashi said the exact same thing somewhere in his Book of Five Rings, or in his 20 Precepts for Living Life. I think it was like 20, or maybe it was 21, it was something like that. The quote said, have few desires throughout your life. Wang Ji Wu and Musashi both said that. And that's a really true thing. Like, maybe it's difficult if you're not a monk to get rid of all desires, but you can limit your amount of desires. You can be someone who's not consumed with greed for, whatever, like you should not be stoking greed. You should not be thinking that greed is a good thing. You should realize that, the less greed you have, the better. The less desires you have, the better. The less you desire sex, the better. The less you desire money, the better. The less you desire, worldly power, the better. The less you desire, food, the better, etc., etc. Like the fewer desires you have, the better. And so you should always be trying to minimize your desires. Make the desires that you do have weak and make the desires that you barely have such that you've let go of them completely, right? And you can do this through meditation. Meditation really does give you significantly more mental and emotional control so that it takes a lot more to lose your temper. Things that upset you are such that you can keep that discontent and anger or discontentment or depression or whatever, like negative states of mind of any kind, you can keep that on the below the surface, you know what I mean? And not just like you're hiding it, but I mean like you can like bury it, like burying a trash field or whatever. Like that's what they do, I believe. They cover a bunch of trash with like a bunch of dirt and then they like grow stuff on top of it and stuff. That's how they get rid of trash, right? So you can kind of do that same thing with meditation. You can cover your anger or your depression or whatever with so much of layers of strength and contentment that like it still exists, but it's like so suppressed now that it's but not suppressed in like a I'm denying reality kind of way. It's more like it's there, but you're just not indulging in it. You're not giving way to it. And it's much weaker now, and you have this positive strength, this positive feelings of mind and mental strength and emotional strength that's accrued from meditation. So now the negative stuff, you can just put it aside. It doesn't really bother you. It's still there, but you can't completely get rid of it, but it doesn't bother you anymore. Mostly you're just calm now and peaceful and happy, right? So you really can minimize the negative states of mind and heart by meditating a lot. And this is a really good thing that everybody should be doing. And here's a really good quote from Bruce Lee. It says, quote, as long as you keep trying to separate yin-yang into two things, you can never hope to realize them. If you want to go somewhere on a bicycle, you cannot push on both pedals at the same time without remaining still. To move forward, you need to push on one pedal at the same time as you let go of the other pedal. The complete movement is push-release. Pushing is a result of releasing, and each action in turn causes the other to happen. When you understand the unity of yin-yang, you act correctly. You do the right thing at the right time, unquote. And by the way, Bruce Lee, bravely, majored in philosophy in college. I don't know if very many people know that, but that's an interesting aside, I think. I also want to share with you something the Wang Xiangzai, creator of I Chuan, said, which sounds, at least on the face of it, to be very similar to a principle from Budo Taijutsu, which was not the art practiced by Wang Xiangzai. Wang Xiangzai was Chinese, and he learned Xing Yi and stuff like that, and he practiced, I think, mainly or fought against Chinese martial artists, whereas Budo Taijutsu is a Japanese martial art, an ancient Japanese martial art. So, or series of martial arts. It's a conglomeration of like 9 martial arts. But Wang Xiangzai said, quote, seek the true from the unreal. And this sounds very similar to the principle of, quote, exchanging truth and falsehood, unquote, which is taught in Budo Taijutsu. So I found that interesting. And another great quote by Hatsumi says, quote, talent comes to you depending on how often you train, unquote. And this is actually very similar to what I think it was Stephen King, but I'm not sure. A famous writer said something about how like you don't wait for ideas to come to you to become a writer. You just write. You sit down to write every day, and you just write. And sometimes it's total crap, and sometimes it's amazing. But whatever, you just sit down like a religion. You just sit down and you write. Whatever you write, and you just write. And then the more you write, the better your writing becomes, and the more ideas you get. Ideas come to you by practicing writing. They don't just come to you and then you write. You write and then they come to you. And that's actually how it is. And I noticed that my brain works this way also regarding like making videos, right? Like the more ideas I get down in my voice recorder, the more I get ideas to get put down in my voice recorder. But like if I stop putting down the ideas that I get in my voice recorder, then I start getting less and less ideas, right? So this is really how it is. The more you practice something, the more you get better at that thing, or the more insights you have at that thing, or whatever it is. Whether it's martial arts, or whether it's writing, or whether it's ideas for videos. And this is probably partially also why women are less creative than men, because women have a worse work ethic than men. So having a worse work ethic means they're practicing less, which means their brain is less geared toward that thing, so they're not getting ideas, so they're not making, they're not practicing that thing, and so they're not having ideas, because ideas come from practice. You don't get the ideas and then you practice, you practice and then you get the ideas, you see? So since women don't practice, they don't get the ideas, so they're not as creative, and then not getting the ideas leads to them practicing even less, and then they get less ideas, etc., etc. This is why you only get a video from Blonde in the Belly of the Beast once every long while. This is why, Brittany Pettibone does not put out a video every day. This is how it is, It's like women have less of a work ethic because they have less testosterone, and this makes them less creative. Because talent comes to you depending on how often you train, just like Hatsumi said. I also want to mention that Wang Shujin would recommend repeatedly practicing certain moves. He was a Xing Yi master, I think. He would practice certain moves, like the single palm, and he would not just do it himself. He'd recommend that other people, like his students, do these moves over and over again, like the single palm change of Xing Yi, or the first movement of Xing Yi called splitting. And he would recommend that people practice these for hours and hours on end. This is actually similar to Yang Cheng Fu, grandson of the founder of Yang-style Taiji Chuan, which is the style that you think of when you think of Taiji Chuan. Cheng Fu would also practice the same moves over and over and over again, very repetitively for a very long time. Wang Shujin was also experienced in Taoist meditation. This is also interesting. And I don't know if I mentioned later in the video, but specifically what Yang Cheng Fu practiced was he would like hold the single whip posture, or he would practice repulsing monkey. He would practice that move over and over and over again, or he'd practice the brush knee left movement, or maybe brush knee left or brush knee right moves. He would practice those moves over and over and over and over again. I think for even hours on end. This is so Yang Cheng Fu and Wang Shujin of Yang Cheng Fu of Yang-style Tai Chi and Wang Shujin of Xing Yi would both do the same thing, basically. They practice a fundamental movement of their art over and over and over and over again for hours. And they do this like probably every day, right? This is how these guys were, and this is why they were so good. This is how you get good at something. You do it over and over and over and over and over endlessly, And there's always more depth to be plumbed from it, more wisdom to be gained by practicing, and more body awareness to be had. So you can always get better. So that's why they always practice endlessly like that, because there's no end to the amount of skill you can gain. So you just keep practicing the basics like that. And I also want to point out that Bagua Zhang, the other internal martial art, the big three are Tai Chi, Bagua Zhang and Xing Yi. Although Xing Yi is so external, I don't even know why they call it an internal martial art, because Liu He Ba Fa is way more internal of a martial art than Xing Yi is. So I don't know why they call Xing Yi an internal martial art, but whatever. The big three internal martial arts are Xing Yi, Bagua, and Tai Chi. And then Liu He Ba Fa is kind of a lesser known fourth, even though it's, like I said, like just as good as Tai Chi. It's amazing. Even at martial arts, it's amazing. Even though Tai Chi is not very good at martial arts these days, because mainly the martial arts side of Tai Chi has been lost for the most part. I mean, I think probably some people still know some of it, but even Cheng Fu was only master of, like, I think, or maybe it was, what's his name? That guy who's the student of, I think, Cheng Fu, that guy who died of alcoholism in his 70s. That guy, I can't remember what his name is. He's really famous. That guy, he, what was I going to say? Fuck, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, that guy, I think it was him. He had only mastered like 12 out of the 22 directions of not movement, but like you can divide, fit 3D space into however many directions you want, but in Tai Chi it's divided into 22 directions. And these are like 22 directions you can redirect the person's balance into, so that you can throw them off balance, like when you're practicing push hands, right? So practicing push hands, you can redirect people in these 22 directions and make them lose their balance. But this guy, he was a master, and he had only mastered 12 of those directions, right? And like pretty much nobody these days is even as good as him. So like it's not been completely lost, but mostly it's been lost. The martial arts applications of Tai Chi and stuff like this, and the skill at martial arts, right? But yeah, I wanted to mention that Bagua Zhang practice of walking the circle is also called moving pole. And it's basically like a form of Zhan Zhuang. It's kind of weird because it's sort of a mix of both movement and stillness, because you've got your hands in what's similar to the single whip posture of Xing Yi. That is one hand palm out in front of you and the other hand close to your body and palm out also. And then you kind of like walk around in a circle with that, with like your with like the forward hand facing the inside of the circle that you're walking around. You see, this is called moving pole, or I think it might have it's called walking the circle also. And it's basically like a form of walking Zhan Zhuang, because the top of your body is like in a static posture, but your legs are moving. You're walking around in a circle. So it's pretty interesting. And that's one of the basic things that Bagua Zhang practitioners practice a lot as well. So you could say that's kind of like Tai Chi. You could also say it's kind of like Zhan Zhuang standing meditation. Another quote by Masaaki Yatsumi goes like this, quote, "Life is a series of moments," unquote. I think this is probably quite true, although, I don't know, maybe that reveals his lack of meditation ability, because the more you meditate, the more awareness starts to connect and become an unbroken thread to where you're perpetually in the present. And then it's not a series of moments, it's one moment that just goes on forever until you die, There was another thing I want to say in this video is that there was a guy named Hua Tuo who practiced an art that he created. This is a long time ago. I don't know, hundreds, maybe over 1,000 years ago. And this art was called The Frolic of the Five Animals. And it might have been similar to the internal martial arts of today. This guy lived to be 100 years old. He is said to have still appeared to be in the prime of his life when he was put to death at the age of 100 years old. He was a very humble Taoist who avoided fame and turned down offers for government service. He also used acupuncture and herbs, which may have also been part of his achievement of longevity. There have also been more than one master who seldom spoke. Li Daozi, master of the art of Xian Tian Chuan, rarely spoke. G.T. Fu, master of the art of Xin Yichuan, not to be confused with Xing Yichuan, although I think Xin Yichuan was the prototype of Xing Yichuan. Xing Yichuan evolved from Xin Yichuan, which was, I believe Xin Yichuan was a lot more of an internal martial art than Xing Yichuan became. But anyway, G.T. Fu, master of Xin Yichuan, also rarely spoke, and Yang Cheng Fu, master of Yang-style Tai Chi Chuan, also seldom spoke. And that's also a very Taoist thing, not speaking, although it's also a very Buddhist thing as well. More principles, apothegms, passed down over the centuries to the present day, where they are preserved by the practitioners of Budo Taijutsu, are the following aphorisms. Quote, "From this side there is not the first strike," unquote. This is a quote from the martial art of Gikan-Ryu, and one of the 9 Ryus of Budo Taijutsu. And related to the things I've said about Zhan Zhuang earlier, Gikan-Ryu Kame, that is postures or poses or stances of martial art, are of balance until they have been extensively practiced, which is a secret in and of itself, is what Masaaki Yatsumi said. So Gikenru kind of basically has Zhanzhuang as well, because the martial arts postures are themselves postures that you hold and practice balance in. So Budo Taijutsu seems to have Zhanzhuang also. And Yang Chengfu, Yang-style Taiji Chuan master, liked to stay in the single whip and play guitar postures for lengthy periods of time, as well as repeatedly doing step-back repulse monkey move and the move called deflect downward parry and punch. Even in later life, when he was obese, he was unbeatable. Although, if I remember correctly, Yang Chengfu died at a pretty young age. I can't remember if he was in his 30s or his 40s or whatever, but maybe he was in his early 50s, but he was pretty young. And he probably died because of his obesity. After all, Taiji Chuan can increase your libido, your energy, make you very relaxed, and can improve your health, but it's not going to clean the plaque out of your arteries, and it's not going to heal a torn ACL in your knee that needs surgery. So these healing arts only work for certain things. They're good at increasing strength and reflexes and general health, as well as balance and tendon strength, but they're not a magical cure-all or anything like that. They're not going to cure cancer either. Another principle from one of the Budo Taijutsu arts is from Gyoko-ryu, and it says, quote, violence is to be avoided, unquote. And another quote from Gyoko-ryu says, quote, the sword is for peace and for protecting the country, one's family, and nature, unquote. Here's an interesting quote from Kenichi Sawai, who I believe, if I remember correctly, practiced Ichuan. He said, quote, love, fighting, and accidents come mostly unexpected. How can you prepare yourself for the unexpected? Develop your inborn intuition and act natural under all circumstances. And here's a couple of quotes from the Taiji classics. Quote, it is only from the greatest pliability and from yielding completely that you can attain power and ascendancy, unquote. Isn't that just so true? I mean, just look at women. Just look at the people at the top of society. They don't argue. They just walk away or give a polite answer or a polite non-answer and then move on. Look at the Don in The Godfather Part 1. He was a very calm, polite, and peaceful individual. This is how truly powerful people are. They're very calm, And if people disagree with them, they're kind of just like, okay. They don't really argue. The other quote from the Taiji classics goes like this, quote, the chi is vibrating like a drum. The spirit is conserved within, unquote. This is really true. When you meditate, especially when doing Zhanzhuang, you can sometimes feel your whole body, or maybe just the bottom half of your body, but you can feel a good chunk of your body, big part of your body, buzzing with energy, and your body feels numb. And like, it's really weird, interesting feeling. Your whole body is numb, but at the same time, you can feel it buzzing with energy. It's really fascinating. You have to experience it yourself to know what I'm talking about. And you can. It's not all that hard. I think it probably gets harder to have that experience as you get older and your energy declines. But if you're young, in your teens or your 20s, you can definitely have this experience. Maybe even if you're in your 30s. Another quote by Wang Xiangzai says, quote, the way of science is to understand fundamental principles, unquote. And like all these quotes, it's so true, A Chinese maxim says, quote, going into a fight must be like taking a walk, and striking your opponent must be like snapping your fingers, unquote. Kenichi Sawai, who I mentioned before, he founded this art called Taiki Ken. I don't even know why he bothered calling it Taiki Ken, because really it's just a Japanese version of Ichuan. He learned Ichuan from Wang Xiangzai, and then he took it to Japan and then called it Taiki Ken. It's like, why bother changing the name? Why not just call it Ichuan? I don't think he even changed it much. Maybe he didn't even change the art at all, so why give it a new name, I don't know, but whatever. He said, quote, Taiki Ken will improve whatever you do. By mastering the essence of Taiki Ken, you will be more intuitive in your actions. Whatever you do, you will do it better with less effort, unquote. And again, Ichuan or Taiki Ken is really just standing stake meditation. You stand, with your legs, with your feet about shoulder width apart, and you stand with your knees slightly bent, and you put your arms out in front of you like you're holding a big giant beach ball, and your fingers are about, I don't know, maybe 12 inches apart, or maybe 6 inches apart, 6 to 12 inches apart, let's say, and your palms are facing inward, and you just hold yourself in that position for as long as you can. And the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it, and then you just get better and better at being peaceful and being balanced, like physically balanced. You get better and better at balance. You get better and better at like cultivating chi when you're doing that, settling your mind down, etc. And he's right. It's a form of meditation, and it does make you more intuitive. It does make you better at things, etc. Another quote that I think is good is this one. I can't remember where it's from. Maybe the Tao Te Ching. It says, quote, "The Tao never avoids people. However, people cause the Tao to avoid them." And here's a Tai Chi Chuan poem called Five Characters Ancient Poem. It says, quote, "The principle is without boundaries, but its sources are even in little ants. Do not peep at the garden for 3 years. Have one will and focused spirit. It is necessary to study from a good teacher and also visit wise friends. Follow the rules in all respects, and a narrow beam of understanding will appear. Next level is deeper than the previous one. The meaning within the levels is without boundaries. Opening is linked to closing. Openings and closings pass on from one to another in order. Sometimes one is guided into victory and cannot stop practicing even though one wants to. Time, study, and efforts to the utmost, and your skill will grow every day. If only there is no obstacle, you will suddenly understand great void." Unquote. So I thought that was quite an interesting and good Tai Chi Chuan poem. Clearly, the person has quite a bit of understanding, right? I especially like that, follow the rules in all respects, and a narrow beam of understanding will appear. And I like the part that says you cannot stop practicing even though one wants to. I have had that experience with certain things, practices like meditation or whatever, or even other things. It's like if you practice something enough, eventually it creates its own momentum, and it's hard to stop practicing. And then that's a good thing, right? Because then it's not a grind. It's not difficult to practice. You just practice. Whatever it is, you just practice it. Another quote that I want to mention here is from Taquan or Hakwin, or maybe someone else. I can't remember, but it says, quote, "Mind turns along with myriad situations. Its turning point is truly recondite," unquote. So this is really a profound Zen statement about how the mind is there, but it's really not there. The mind has no center, and in a sense, it doesn't even exist. Everything you see and hear and feel and think is mind. Everything. Even the things you hate. The things you see out of the corner of your eye, or what you only know subconsciously. This is mind as well. So mind really kind of has no nature at all, right? Other than awareness. And what you think of as you is just thought and habits and memories. It's not really you at all. And another good quote is from Milarepa. He said, quote, "Hasten slowly and you will soon arrive," unquote. Milarepa is probably the most notable Tibetan Buddhist of all time. Founder of the Kagyu school, I believe. He's said to have attained full Buddhahood in one lifetime, like I mentioned before. Also, there's a principle of Budo Taijutsu, which is from the Takagi Yoshin-Ryu school, and it teaches that a martial artist of that school, should be calm and flexible like a willow. And I think this is quite a good teaching, The Chinese really understand the value of harmony and peace and flexibility and minimalism and not saying anything, not doing anything, not moving, etc. This is a very sort of female type of wisdom, but it's also very profound and deep, and almost it goes beyond male or female, right? It's very much Taoist, it's very Buddhist, it's very transcendental. And also Chong San Feng said, quote, "Let tranquility and spontaneity be the source," unquote. And I will add that anyone who's meditated a lot knows that when one meditates, many ideas and insights pop into one's head during and after meditation. Meditation is truly a void, which is a major source, probably the best source of new ideas and insights. These insights arise from calm and purity of mind, and they arise spontaneously, just like Chong San Feng said. He was a martial artist, but a lot of these high-level martial artists are meditators as well. They know how this stuff works. They know what life is about. They know the path to purifying and brightening and strengthening the mind. Another good quote is also by Hatsumi. I think it's by him. It says, quote, "One cannot live life through pride," unquote. This is a really good quote also. And Hakwin said, quote, "Self-nature is no nature," and he would, quote, unquote. And he was absolutely right about that. We are not this aging body of ours, and we cannot change the looks of our body either, which is more proof that this body is not us. We are not our constantly changing mind either. We are not our constantly changing emotions either. We are not consciousness either, because consciousness is dependent upon the body and upon the sense organs. There's no ear consciousness without functioning ears. There's no eye consciousness without functioning eyes, etc. And another quote, or that I think multiple masters have said, which is, quote, "The slower the movements, the better the skill," unquote. That's a really good quote. And another really good quote is the guy who I mentioned earlier, Masutatsu Oyama. That's his name. The guy who founded Kyokushinryu, or Kyokushinryu, something like that. He said, quote, "Forget everything else and keep training. Just train yourself," unquote. So I have a lot more quotes here, but this video has already been super long, so I'm going to stop here and make the rest of the quotes into a separate video. This has been Redshift. Hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. Hit the thumbs down button if you hated it. Peace, trucks.